Hello, I'm Marky Stein, author of Fearless Interviewing and the 10-Minute Career Coach. And today we're going to talk about something called radical reframing. Now, there are actually three parts of radical reframing, and we're going to talk about part one and part two in this video. If you're wondering what the word radical reframing means, it actually means turning something that is possibly negative sounding into something that sounds at least neutral and possibly even very positive. Now, I've been doing this for a long time with my career counseling clients, and I just named it this year, Radical Reframing. So let me give you an example of radical reframing in an interviewing situation. Let's say the interviewer asks, "Why did you leave your last job?" And perhaps you were laid off. So naturally, you might say, "I was laid off." Now, when you say "I was laid off," it sounds a little bit negative. Let's look at something that sort of neutralizes that statement. What about saying, "I left my last job because my company ran into financial problems and my entire department was downsized"? Or you could say, "I left my last job because there was a mass reorganization at my company and my department was downsized." Now, the words reorganization and downsized really do sound a lot much better, I think you'll agree, than the word layoff. Somehow when you say, "I was laid off," it seems to sort of put the blame on yourself, as if it could have been a comment about your performance. But the fact is that some of the people who are laid off in companies are some of the very highest performers, and it really doesn't have to sound like it was something about your performance. When you say my company was reorganized and my department was downsized, it takes the blame, the sounding of blame, off of you and really puts it more on the company. The company was having financial problems and my department was downsized. I think you'll agree that it really does sound better in the second statement. Whenever I ask my clients which statement they like better, "I was laid off" or "my company had a reorganization," they all agree that they would rather say "my company reorganized" than "I was laid off." Let's take this a step further. What if in an interview they say something like, "Why did you leave your last company? And what have you been doing in this gap in employment from your last company to the interview?" Well, most people would say, "Well, I left my last company because I was laid off and I've been unemployed for 6 months." Now, while that statement may be true, it really sounds kind of negative. The word unemployed is a word that your clients never have to use again, as well as the word layoff. They never have to use it again with radical reframing. So let's take a look at what we can say instead of "I was unemployed." Now, one thing we can say is, "I was upgrading my skills." That not only sounds proactive, but it sounds like one of the very top 10 things employers are looking for these days, which is lifelong learners. So when you say "I was upgrading my skills," it's going to make you feel better about yourself, and it's going to sound better to the employer. So let's take a look at a whole statement, and I'll give you an example of upgrading your skills in something. And then on my website, radicalreframing.net, I'm going to give you tons of examples of how you can upgrade your skills and even have a statement as fantastic as I was taking online classes from Harvard University. And by the way, I'm going to show you a free way that you can do that on my website. But for now, while we're just exploring part 1 and part 2 of radical reframing, let's just take the whole statement. Why were you laid off? Because my department was downsized. What have you been doing during this gap in employment? I've been upgrading my skills in Microsoft Excel, and I earned an advanced certificate in Microsoft Excel. So now I can do pivot tables and what if analyses. That sounds pretty good to me. And possibly the most important thing about radical reframing is to note that it not only sounds good to the listener and not only neutralizes the experience of the job ending and makes very positive the experience of the gap in employment, it makes you feel better about yourself and makes you sound better to the employer. That's all for today. And tomorrow I'm going to present you with part 3 of radical reframing, which is how radical reframing can radically alter the future for you and your clients. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.